Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors. I hope everyone had a wonderful Memorial Day, and we are glad to be back with you here on today. We just want to say hello to all of our social media family that's out there to Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, and all of you that are there, all of our social media family. Thank you so much for being here with us on this evening. We also want to remind you to share. As always, remember to share this program. Of course, it's for informational purposes only, but we are here to share good, valuable information with you. We're going to go around the board as we do all the time, and we're just going to do brief introductions of ourselves and everyone who's here with us on today. My coworker Douglas Graham is on vacation, and he's not here with us. And last week we missed Dr. Terry Mason because he was on vacation, but he's back with us now. So I guess they're tag teaming on us, so to say. We're going to go around the board as we do always, and we're going to start with our hellos. I'm going to introduce Dr. Pete from Near North Health, who is that he's that infectious disease specialist and family medicine doctor, that all around man who can save you. How about that? Hey, Dr. Pete, new glasses. How you doing?
Hey, I try to change it up. It makes me feel better. I'm happy to be here, and hopefully we can answer some questions and bring the community a little closer to better health.
Wonderful. I want to say hey to Linda Johnson that's there, saying good evening to everyone for being here. I think I see the guy who says that I threaten him to be here all the time. That's Dr. James Miller. How are you, Dr. Miller?
I'm doing well. And glad to be here today and to participate in hopefully some great discussions and hopefully put some mind at ease and inform some people of things that will make your life better.
Simply outstanding. To that weight loss guru, the guy who actually has this burning sensation to be on Iron Chef. That's our very own Dr. Tony Hampton. Dr. Hampton?
Definitely happy to be here tonight. Hope everybody had a great holiday weekend, and always excited to share messages of healing. So just thankful for Congressman Danny Davis for the opportunity to spread the good word of healing.
Wonderful. I want to say hey to Linda Ballinger that's here. She says, good evening. It is good to see you all again. To Loretta, good evening to everyone. By any chance, is that the man I see with the tan, the one who's been on vacation? That's our very own Dr. Terry Mason.
Good evening. How are you, Nikki, and the rest of the panel? It's always good to be with my colleagues and for us to share a way to make certain that we can re-impart some of the information we've been blessed to learn through our academic sojourn through medical school, that Congressman Davis was so involved in making sure that door stayed open for us, whether we went here in Chicago or other places. So we're grateful. And we're here just being the public servants that mirror what he's always been.
Oh, wow. Wonderful. By any chance, along the way, do I see that twerking doctor who tells you how to lose weight through African dance, or, the one who is that family practice medicine doctor, but she keeps it 100. That's our very own Dr. Maya Green, and I am religiously twerking 3 times a week, and I want to let you know that it is actually working.
Yeah, it does. It's a lifestyle. A lot of people see what we don't know is the history of African dance and twerk comes from a space where it's not necessarily deemed as or talked about or labeled the way it is in the U.S., right? So if you look years back, the African grandmas go to a Nigerian wedding, you'll find out real quick. Been jumping and isolating muscle and stuff like that. And it's actually in the art form. I hate that it got kind of turned around in the U.S. But anyway, happy to see you. Nikki, always good to see your face. Congressman, thank you for allowing me to be here, and to my esteemed colleagues that I learn from all the time. Thank you for having me. It's good to see your faces again.
I want to say hey to Dolores Wild. That's simply fantastic. I want to say hey to Dolores Wild, who's here. And she said, good evening, family. To the man who makes this possible for us all the time. And if you get some feedback, usually I'm at home When I am streaming from home on Monday nights, I usually leave the office about a half an hour early to set up. But we had a tough, busy day today, so I am still here. So if you get some feedback, it's only because the congressman and I are only a floor away from each other. So I will be muting to make sure that you don't get that feedback from me. Hey, Leanne Harris, I see that you are here. But to the guy who makes this possible for all of us, to the one who is a vanguard on healthcare and who sets the bar high to make sure that we can do better, that's our very own congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, that's Congressman Danny K. Davis.
Well, thank you. I was cleaning out my basement this week, and I opened a box and found a copy of my doctoral dissertation that I finished in 1977. And much of what we have been talking about and talk about all of these weeks, I've been pleased to know that a lot of it was written about in this document. And since Doug isn't here and all of you are esteemed, enlightened African Americans, nobody's on the group that's not an African American. I want to just read something that a non-African American guy wrote that I put in the preface to my dissertation. And it says that no matter how ignorant any person is, there is one thing he knows better than anybody else. And that is where the shoes pinch his own feet. And that is because it is the individual that knows his own trouble, even if he is not literate or sophisticated in other respects. The idea of democracy, as opposed to aristocracy, is that every individual must be consulted in such a way, actively, not passively, that he himself becomes part of the process of authority, of the process of social control, that his needs and wants have a chance to be registered where they count in determining social policy. And of course, that was written by John Dewey. And all of these discussions, I think, mirror some of what he was saying. And that is every individual, no matter who he or she might be, becomes a real part of the whole. And I know that we've made some progress relative to the coronavirus, but I sure hope that we don't lighten up. And I'm not talking to just those of us on the panel. I'm talking period. You know, the president says that he'd like to see 70% of the people in the United States vaccinated. Of course, in some of the communities where we live and work and spend our time, only 30%, some instances less than 30%. And there are still large numbers of individuals who are saying, not me. I ain't doing that. And so we have to just keep working on them. You know, when I think of trying to get people to make use of the vaccine, I remember a lady who used to come to every revival when I was a kid. There was a woman in my community named Aunt May Powell. And Aunt May would come and sit on the mourner's bench every revival. Every church that had a revival, she would be on the mourner's bench. But she would never, ever join church. And the poor preachers, I think they had a contest going. Who's gonna get Aunt May to join? They take off their tie. I mean, one preacher took off his shirt. He took off his shoes. He did everything he could think of trying to get Aunt May to join. And Aunt May say, you can do whatever you want to do. She said, I'm a Christian. That's what y'all don't understand. She said, I'm a Christian, but I'm just not going to join no church. And she never did. And she died. And we never figured out whether or not she went to heaven. But she was resolute. So I don't think we can have lots of our people be as resolute as they may. So we just got to keep working on them and keep trying to get them to sign up to take the shot. Thank you all so much for what you do and what you've done and the continuation of doing it. I don't know if you realize how impactful you have been, but I read all these little notes people send, and I tell you, some people have said some very good things about what you all do on Monday night. So if nobody else ever tell you that you're the top of the line, the cream of the crop, sui generis, as Harold Washington used to say, that just simply meant in a class all by yourself. That's what you are. So thank you, and let's get it on.
All right. Want to say good evening to Rosetta Guy, who's here with us on tonight. She says, good evening, everyone. Martha is here. She says, good evening, everyone. Sister Bonnie is here saying good evening just as well. And Virginia Knight says, good evening. Glad to have our doc back. She says she's glad to see everybody back here on this evening with us. I guess we were really missed on last week. Leonard Arnold says, amen. Glad to have you back. And Wilbur Cook says, looking forward to the blessings of the medical guidance. Looking forward to the blessings of the medical guidance, healing, and inspiration. I love these doctors and all the healing properties and powers that they share. Just treating illnesses is not what they do. They are absolutely amazing. And once again, Curtis Jones is here. Lillian Frazier is here saying hello to everyone. Linda says, yes, they are the top of the line. And once again, Wilbur Cook says, love the ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for loving people to life. Thanks for loving you to life. Our first question tonight says, hello, everyone. I watch you guys every Monday night, and I must say that you are experts in your field. I am very confused by the CDC and our like the city of Chicago's mask wearing protocol. Everything will be opening up soon to full capacity. However, people are still being diagnosed as positive for COVID-19. Can you guys please shed some light on proper mask wearing? FYI, I will not be coming out of mine, but my husband and some of our family members want out. Can you please give an explanation on when to and when not to? Once again, thank you, Congressman Davis, for this weekly platform, and thank you all.
Yeah, I can start off. And, the reality is, if you're going to be data-driven and evidence-based, then we really should look to the guidance of the CDC for our guidance around mask wearing. And, the idea that if you're vaccinated, that they are recommending that you can be in certain places that are that's well ventilated without your mask. Now, that's provided that you know enough information about the people that are around you to know that they've also been vaccinated. So I think that even with the CDC guidance, you have to make your own, decisions around. There may be some places that you cannot make a a good assumption about the people that you're around, and it might be a little closed in, and so you might opt at that point not to follow the CDC and still wear your mask. You follow me? Um, the other thing is that I mean, it's okay for people to have in your own like your own anecdotal way of behaving, right? So I might say, sitting in my parked car in a parking lot, I prefer to have my seatbelt on just in case someone hits me. But just because you're doing that does not necessarily mean that the data supports that is a method of keeping you safer in a motor from a motor vehicle accident. So I'm saying you did that and it makes you feel good, then go right ahead. But that's not data supported, and again, you did that and that's okay. You wore your mask in spite of what the CDC says. That's okay. But that's not necessarily data driven. And but in my opinion, if it makes you feel better, then go ahead and wear your mask. In spite of the fact that the CDC has lessened or loosened the guidelines a little bit. But again, I think if you follow the guidelines, it will tell you that there are certain instances where you do need to wear your mask when you can't make the assumptions around the people that are around you, and if it's not well ventilated. And then the other thing is, and I know my colleagues are going to pick up on this as well, but that, again, the efficacy rates were only 95, I should say only, but 95 and then 94.6%, which means there was a percentage of people that got vaccinated that would still get infected. The efficacy of this vaccine was to prevent severe illness, not to prevent any infection. And so I think that's something that needs to be brought out as well.
Well, I see Maya and Tony, well, Dr. Green and Dr. Hanson, faces say they want to say something. So I'm just,
I was just going to dovetail and emphasize something that Dr. Pete was talking about, which is the guidance talk about mask wearing for individuals who are fully vaccinated. And what that means is I got vaccinated, and if I had a 2-part vaccine, I got it 2 weeks ago. If I got a 1-part vaccine, I got it 2 weeks ago. Right? So those superpowers come in 2 weeks after you have completed your series. So say I'm taking a 2-part vaccine and I got dose 1 2 weeks ago. I'm not fully vaccinated. I need that second one if it's a 2-part. So I just want to stress that. I want to stress that, and then I want to also to add what Dr. Pete said is kind of transparently, I'm fully vaccinated. I'm still wearing my mask when I go out into public places. Because that's my choice. Also, I might have some cute masks that like Nikki makes them. It's now it can be a statement piece. Hey, live your life, do you? But also hand washing, right? Hand washing has never been so. This hand washing 20 seconds between the fingers, under the nail, hit that thumb and stuff like that. That's not new. That has actually been the recommendation since forever. We just emphasize it and reminded people during COVID. So that one part will never, ever, ever, ever go away. All right. So we're continuing to wash our hands, and I just want to add those 2 things, and I'm done for right now.
And I guess I'll chime in. I think, for me, it comes down to making sure I'm basically similar in that if I'm walking around taking a walk, I probably won't have my mask. I got it in my hand. If I'm walking into a grocery store, public place, I tend to wear it. And it's not just, I know what the CDC recommendations are. You can walk around if you've been vaccinated, but there's still a lot of fear out here. And I just feel as a citizen, a lot of people just feel more comfortable when they're next to somebody who has a mask. When I was traveling, after celebrating my oldest son, a year later graduation coming from St. Louis, I noticed when I traveled into the rural communities between St. Louis and Illinois, when you go into a gas station in those communities, you didn't see a lot of mask wearing. I also see it, and when I did see it, I only saw it in African Americans and Latin Americans. So I think that there's different cultural perspectives and different belief systems. So I'm saying what Brother Pete's saying, which is go with your comfort level. I was more concerned about people getting vaccinated. I was not as concerned about. I was not as concerned about people overprotecting themselves. Overprotecting yourself, I can live with that. I just want to make sure you're protected. I always tell my patients that if they have a washable fabric mask or something like that, they should probably consider, doubling up on that. I always tell my patients to wear a nose and mouth cover. Make sure it's covering both. I make sure that it's as snug as you can tolerate. I just try to give basic recommendations. I want to make sure our babies are protected. So I make sure our babies have masks that actually fit them properly. When you have hair on your face, that's not going to be as snug. So you have to be even more concerned about making sure that it fits well. So there's some principles that you can follow. But that what was stated about, making sure your hands are okay, making sure you make sure before you touch your mask that your hands are okay. Make sure you're not touching your mask constantly. So these are basic principles. But I think at the end of the day, some common sense should come in here. And I think that over caution is always okay. Nobody's going to judge you unless they're doing it for political reasons. They're not going to judge you because you're being overcautious. And we're going to have to ease into this state of lack of fear. I'm going to travel for the first time next week on a plane. It took a lot of getting comfortable to get to that point. I had to look at, well, where are we going? What are they doing? Where we're going, et cetera, et cetera. And I think as we get more comfortable, people are going to celebrate the fact that we're starting to make progress. So I'm actually excited about this stage that we're in. And I'm happy that I'm actually going to finally get a chance to travel. We can't live a life of fear. And the last thing I want to say is, and Dr. Terry Mason will respect where I'm going with this next comment is, the mortality rate for flu was somewhere around 0.01%. The mortality rate for COVID is around 0.03%. So although we've really changed our lives because of this, it's not as dramatic as you may have imagined. But the key is that it's really not about the virus, it's about the host. And what I mean by that is your body needs to be unattractive to this virus. So if you get exposed to it, rather you got exposed with or without a mask, if the host is healthy, then the chances that you're going to succumb to this is much less. So I want to overemphasize the importance of doing self-care. And when I think about my patients who have done well, most of them have done well because they've done self-care. So I'll wrap up with that.
Yeah. I think we have to, the people who are questioning the recommendation of the CDC and speaking that they have some confusion about it. I think what happens is that there was a time when there was some criteria put out in terms of when the mask was going to be, when we were going to be able to shed the mask. And I think most people sort of took those percentage when we were talking about herd immunity, and most folks sort of thought that it was going to be when we reach herd immunity that it would be safe for everybody to shed their mask. And so now I think that people are a little bit confused that prior to us reaching those numbers, the restrictions are being decreased. But I think that the data that they are and the recommendation that they are giving are a good recommendation, and they also will help people to feel better about the situation that they're in. And also, I think it's also to kind of motivate people because basically the people that have the most freedom are those that have been vaccinated versus people who've not. So that's also an additional incentive for those that haven't been vaccinated to become vaccinated. And I think that So I think that we have to use common sense in these ways. Is that if you're around a group of small kids, or you're in an environment where there are a group of small kids that are generally maybe less than the age of 12, those are consideration that you gotta that you gotta realize may cause you to respond differently, because you don't know and you're not going to be able to determine what their health status is. I mean, most of these kids are probably fairly healthy, and their risk of getting sick from an infection is probably decreased, but you just don't know that. And so when you're in an environment where there are other folks that you don't know, and that they are probably people that for one reason or another haven't met the criteria to be vaccinated, I think you have to be cautious, as opposed to being on the other side, just going ahead and doing, feeling free to just to make yourself comfortable.
And then I just want to say
Great.
one more thing about herd immunity. Sorry, Nikki, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I just want to say one more thing about herd immunity. And the first thing I want to say about herd immunity is the studies are showing, this is the first time I've seen herd immunity, and I'm a younger doctor, so you all can correct me. This is the first time I've actually seen herd immunity be placed at 70%. You know, I'm used to seeing things in the 80s, definitely in the 90s, being noted to be herd immunity. On top of that, I just want to note that Chicago has consistently, since I was a teenager, and I'm 40 now, been listed as one of the most segregated cities in the U.S. So let's unpack that. What does that mean? What does that have to do with herd immunity? If I know I grew up on the south side of Chicago, spent a couple of years in Nigeria, but I grew up on the south side of Chicago, most of my life. And it wasn't until I started studying for medical school. I went to UIC for a program called Upper Bound, right? So that's like West Loop. It wasn't until I started having to go to the MCAT tutorials that I had to travel all the way to the north side because they weren't on the south side, right? That's a whole story in itself, right? That can unpack and preach on a Sunday all day. That's separate. Let's bring that up another time. But the point is, when I wanted to get into medical school, the test that you had to pass in order or perform well on in order to get into medical school was only being offered. The tutorials were only being offered on the north side. I missed a lot of those sessions because I had never been on the north side in my entire life. And this is post college. This is when I came back from college, So I had never been on the north side in my entire life, and so I would get lost every time I had to travel. And we didn't have Uber back then, Bottom line is, if you're in one neighborhood and not traveling to the other, in certain neighborhoods, if herd immunity, you have not reached that 70% in that neighborhood, that is not a neighborhood where we want to go with this mask off and stuff like that. And then we still have a lot of work to do. What is that? And so when they're talking about herd immunity, they're talking about if I'm in a room and 70% of the people in that room have been vaccinated, that's when you're at herd immunity. If 70% of people in that room, in that house, in that community, at that public event, at that gathering have not been vaccinated, you're not at herd immunity. That's what they're talking about. And so just keep that in mind. And this takes us back to what I think Nikki and Congressman Davis put this together for. And we talk about a lot of times protecting the tribe. And so what does that mean? That means I got to wash my hands. I got to wear my mask. I got to take my vitamin D, my vitamin C, and I have to keep my body healthy and put nutrients in my body that are going to cause my body to be able to deal with or refuse establishment of COVID or fight off COVID if it's in my area. So I don't know. That was a lot. I don't know if I stated it enough, but bottom line is that herd immunity only works if you're in the area where enough people have been vaccinated.
So it looks like Dr. Mason got something to say. I don't know if he's thinking or if he's got something he want to say, but I just want to clarify one thing because I got a crazy little text message and I want to just clarify this. So what I hear you saying is not if you hear on the news that 70% have been vaccinated, but if you at Big Mama's house in the backyard and 70% of the people at the party have not been vaccinated, you still need to have your mask on because Big Mama's backyard isn't at herd immunity yet. Am I correct?
Right. Yes, that's a microcosm of it. Nikki, hold on, I got sneeze. Hold on. I'm sorry. Nope, I don't. Okay, so if you think about it, you see how they're reporting the numbers of people vaccinated state by state. The coronavirus does not know geography.
Right.
It doesn't care about that. It doesn't care about this is Indiana, this is Illinois, things like that. And so if we're in areas where our communities have not been vaccinated, those communities are in higher risk of spreading the virus and possibly developing another strain. I know we're going to get, and that virus possibly mutating.
No, I got you. And I use the person's analogy when they text me. So if Big Mama's backyard is not 70%, so if your cousins haven't went and they've outnumbered you, you need your mask on. So if you at the Blue Note, you need your mask on. If you at church, you need your mask on. It's 70% of those people there. And I'm open for that comment. If you got it, I want to make sure you have it because I love the analogy that she gave. So I definitely want to make sure you have it. Lillian Frazier says, are all masks the same? I see fashion masks. Do these work?
Not a lace mask. You cannot wear a lace for a fishnet mask. That's not gonna work. Dr. Mason, I mean, those are my thoughts on whether our community being vaccinated. I see some looks. I don't know if some of the other colleagues have some, some different opinions, want to talk about it.
Yeah, I think Dr. Maya, I think you bring up a great point, and I think it's important that the community knows the difference and how to make those minor adjustments depending on where they are. That, the guidance says one thing, but you have to make your adjustments according to whatever environment you find yourself in. And that would be true if you were, if you're someplace and you feel unsafe, you got to move around, right? We learned that, Dr. Hampton, growing up on the West Side, and I'm growing up on the South Side. You have to move around when you don't feel safe, right? So the same thing, you may have to wear a mask, you may have to double mask, right? Depending on the environment that you're in and how long you're there and how less ventilated that place might be. So I think that's a great point you brought up. And then, like the original guidelines said, all masks aren't equal. The N95s have been shown through evidence based to be the better, less, more protective. The cloth mask, if you want to wear it, those are obviously less protective. But if you want a double mask for those folks who really want to get the bling bling going or whatever. So that's hopefully that answers that.
Okay. I think we got it. And the group of students over at Triton that's having some type of study group, Dr. Maya wants you to know that they thank you for that. Now they understand about Big Mama's backyard barbecue. All right. Well, all of the new variants of COVID-19 caused us to shut down again, and will we have to go through these phases? So I'm not understanding that question completely, but I think they're asking about the new variants, and I think our vaccines is kind of covering some of these new variants. Am I correct, Dr. P?
Yeah, we don't have data to say that these vaccines, that these strands are not covered by our vaccines. So again, it doesn't mean that we need to totally let our guards down. And we should do more surveillance. We should do more genomic testing on these strands, constantly monitoring these strands. But right now, the data does not support that our current vaccines are not effective against those strands.
Well, let me ask a question, because tomorrow morning at 9:00, I'm going to be in the room with the single individual in this country who has more authority over health resources than any other single individual except the president, I guess, of the United States. And of course, each one of us will get an opportunity to ask one question. We'll get 4 minutes to ask and get an answer to one question from the Secretary of Health and Human Services. What would you ask if you were going to ask that person a question about healthcare and the utilization of healthcare resources or policy in the United States of America?
I'll start. And I don't, I think it's an obvious statement for me. I would ask if we know that most chronic diseases are caused by metabolic disease, probably 80%, would it not be logical to put more resources into educating our population about, nutrition, diet, wellness, because it'll save us a gazillion dollars. So instead of, trying to catch the chicken before it gets out of the barn, how about if we deal with the chicken while it's still in the barn and maybe make that chicken healthier and help raise the chicken ethically? And, I think you hear terms like, there's ways to even raise our grow our fruit and raise our animals in a way that's, that you'll hear a term regenerative farming as an example. And when you do regenerative farming, you can actually lower the carbon footprint. In other words, you can decrease the amount of carbon that goes into the air that causes harm to the environment. And then the second option is to make something like an Impossible Burger, which is a plant-based burger, which does increase a little carbon in the air, but not as much as factory farming, which does do more harm. So if we can teach our farmers how to grow our vegetables and animals in a way that's better, and then we can teach our patients and our community how to eat better. And we know metabolic disease is the cause of so much harm. It would make more sense to focus on that, because if we just focus on just giving people pills, what's going to happen is we'll be chasing our tail for the rest of our existence. So I would want our country to shift its focus, completely do a U-turn. Now that we have plenty of evidence to suggest that is the way we heal people. And we should be in the business of healing. When we all went to medical school, we actually thought we were going to become healers. But instead, we became procedurists and surgery people, and we became people who gave out drugs. And our patients are tired of that. And we're tired of living in a country that does not prioritize wellness. So that's what I would ask. I would shout it from the rooftops and try to remove the things that have been barriers to that.
I think to that same theme that Dr. Hampton mentioned, and I would ask if there could be a shift in priority or shift in value-based care toward more prevention than from treatment, right? Because right now we know that all the money is in the cardiac catheterization, right? After the artery is blocked, everybody wants to pay to get the artery popped open and stented and, diluting chemicals and bypass. But nobody wants to pay that patient attention 15 years before that, before the clock started. Now, part of that goes deeper into a public health kind of model in terms of, community-based care, where it's almost primordial. It's like before prevention, right? healthy communities where people feel safe, where people don't feel unsure about their next meal, those things will create unhealthy behaviors. And so where people are not wanting to smoke and drink just to self-medicate, I take care of patients who have opioid use disorders. And when you listen to their stories are no different than our stories. It's just they had drugs readily available. And so we want people to feel safe, to feel secure, so they're not making unhealthy decisions just because of their condition.
I will. One of the things that I would want to, would want to ask him about is, we all hear people talking about the gun violence and when are we going to declare this a public health emergency and address it as though it is what it is, as opposed to just the rhetoric about the problem? When are we going to begin to deal with the issue that caused these things to happen? I think that, again, a preventable situation, but we're not doing anything until we start doing a lot of talking after the fact, and it's not changing the process every day. The number of people who are being killed by guns and by other kinds of violence is just continuing to grow. So I would say, what are we going to do in terms of declaring this a true? I mean, look at what we did. We said with the pandemic, we said this is an emergency, and we saw a lot of drastic changes addressing this problem. When are we going to do this about gun violence and create an environment that can really address the problems that cause people to do these things?
I think everything that and Congressman, this is, for clarification, this is general health, is not specific to COVID, correct?
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think if just dovetailing all the things that the other doctors listed really focus on social determinants of health, right? Dr. Pete mentioned looking at substance use and the rates of substance use. I remember Dr. Keith Green and Antonio King from Chicago Department of Public Health. We started looking into the crisis of Black men using meth. And they were like, okay, how do you come off of it? What are the steps? Now we know there are people that can turn that around successfully and still be functional or go back to their families and things like that. And I was like, well, hold on. In America, we have created narratives for a lot of the African American community. And I say creative narratives because I think we mentioned a couple of sessions ago that poverty is a structural form of oppression. It's not just poverty. It's a structural form of oppression. And there's so many other, like drugs being brought in our communities. Those people don't got planes. They're not flying it in here, things like that. When are we going to actually, so we have to do something about social determinants of health if we want to impact people's lives. Because, what are they going back to? They're talking about return to your life. Okay, what are they going back to? And if you don't like, the things that some of the, unfortunately, they talk about rappers and expression of themselves and the things they're saying and things like that. But I don't see, like Dr. Miller is saying, or a move to change the narrative, which is on the back end part of the pathology. I think I mentioned American psychopathology is when this gun violence happens, when another George Floyd happens, when we realize that just like we made that algorithm for who can get tested, then we made an algorithm for who can get the vaccine first, this algorithm for take your mask off, we're gonna be like, what? It's hurting Black and brown. This new thing, every time we make an algorithm, it hurts communities of color. And then we act shocked. You see, Dr. Miller is talking about this psychopathology of shock. And what it does is we use that as a fear to paralyze us as a nation. Then we never have to do what Dr. Miller is talking about, which is move forward, move from shock to action. I think Dr. Miller is so focusing on social determinants of health instead of studying it, looking at it, unpacking it again. I think you've already read something from 1977 at the beginning of this. That was the year I was born, where y'all already knew this. You know what I'm saying? So don't pay a white university to study Black problem. You're like, don't do that. Move from shock to actions with addressing social determinants of health. That includes transfer of wealth, because transfer of wealth is part of healthcare.
And I suspect that's a tough one.
Well, let me just say this, because you're right. Social determinants of health is challenging because it's multifaceted. But I will say this, just if you're taking notes, Congressman, I'm looking up the leading causes of death. Number one is heart disease. And they say about 659,000 people a year in the United States. Well, that's a metabolic disease, and you can quickly improve that. Number two is cancer, inflammation, and all these things. That's a metabolic disease. Number three is accidents. I'll let that one pass. Then they have respiratory diseases, things like COPD, inflammation, stroke, metabolic disease, Alzheimer's disease, metabolic disease, diabetes, metabolic disease. So when you look at the top, like 6 or 7 causes of death in this country, most of them are related to metabolic disease. Now, I can reverse diabetes in a month in my clinic, and I'm going to use the word reverse because their A1C goes from 10 to 6 when they make dietary changes. So that's my reality. And it should be every clinician's reality. But we don't live in a world where clinicians are taught any of this stuff. And it's embarrassing. And we need to find a way to teach these clinicians how to do this. And we're going to do our best. Like, I'm with the Society of Metabolic Health Clinicians. So we're trying to find a way to teach the things that even our medical schools are not teaching our clinicians. Everybody on the planet should know if you eat a lot of the foods that raise your blood sugar, that's going to make your blood sugar high, and therefore your diabetes is going to be out of control. That shouldn't be a mystery to people. And if you don't understand that, just do your own experiment. Have a sweet potato pie, and 2 hours later, check your sugar. It's going to taste good going down, but you're going to find yourself having to treat that. And the beauty of it is that when I have my meal tonight, I'm going to have a beautiful meal that's tasty, that's going to satiate me, that's going to make me feel full, and it won't have to have these things. I use those things as things I enjoy periodically, but I do not enjoy these things on a daily basis because it makes me sick. And you get tired of having an upset stomach and a headache and the feeling fatigued and all those things that make you sick. So when it's like almost 8 o'clock at night, if you can still feel good at this hour, having been at work at 6 in the morning, that's a blessing. I did not feel this way 5, 6, 7, I say about 10 years ago before I started this. I did not feel this way. I would have said something. I would have probably said bad words to Dr. Pete when he invited me to this at 7 at night. But when you take care of your temple, you will be able to do great things, and you'll have time for your family, and you'll feel good, and you'll be able to be present at work and all the things that you want to do, just because we taught our clinicians how to tell you what you need to know to be healthy. And that's why if I was in your position, Dr. Danny Davis, I'm going to call you doctor tonight. I think that I would say to them, we have to do better. We have to do better.
The other thing I was thinking about, Dr. Hampton, when you were talking, was changing the value proposition so that many of the doctors are working in the environments where they're limited to 15-minute visits. And when you limit somebody to 15 minutes, which is really like 12 minutes, when you think about the documentation and everything else, then you relegate them to divert more toward pills and not a discussion about lifestyle. And while we know the pills can work, but the pills are temporary. As I tell people, like, they pretend like that they don't have high blood pressure once they take the medicine. I say, well, stop taking the medicine. We'll see what happens to the blood pressure. Because they're still living the same life. They're still eating the same foods, thinking the blood pressure went away because of the pill. No, the pill is controlling your blood pressure as opposed to your lifestyle. But that's the system that our doctors are working in. You got 12 minutes per patient. And that's a lot of pressure. And you know that patients deserve more. They deserve a conversation. Now, never mind what Dr. Hampton said, which was many of them are unprepared to have that conversation. If you gave them 45 minutes, they wouldn't know how to have that conversation. But I'm saying, I think we have to change this narrative where we are rewarded for giving people pills and getting them in and out of the office.
You know, one of the things that is painfully clear, and the question that I would ask the Secretary of Health and Human Services first, is what is his definition of health? What does that mean to him? How would he define that? And then let's look at the systems that he presides over, the funding that he is in charge of, and is there alignment with a real definition of health and what he does and administers on a daily basis? And perhaps if that's not the case, it might be prudent to convene, as government always does, some body to be able to do that. Because I think if we look at health as the so-called absence of disease or the absence of the complications of diseases, then we'll get one answer. But if we look at health in the way that my colleagues have been discussing all evening, I think we get a different and more holistic approach that will then have him meet with the people in charge of human services to determine how best we can use the dollars allocated to human services to better serve the humans that need the service. And we need to think about how that can be done. And it means that we may need to rethink old paradigms. We may need to take a fresh look at things, starting with where does the United States stand in the world in terms of a healthy country? And look at not the ones below us, but the ones above us. And look at what can we glean from these countries, because it's not just, and I can't agree more with my colleagues who have said that we need to really think about because we don't have a real health paradigm. We have a complications management paradigm. That's what we as doctors have been trained to do in America, is manage the complications of high blood pressure or diabetes or all of these other diseases. And we've relegated ourselves not to necessarily have to be in tune or working with city planners or other people who design spaces or safe places for people to live, or the way we even design houses, or if we know that there are toxins in a community that are going to aggravate conditions, removing such things. So I think that there's a wonderful opportunity to create a dialogue between what is health and what are the human services we need to support that. And begin, if we can't do it all at once, is to do what government also does, is commission some people to begin to think about that and create some pilot studies or pilot programs that we could then use to expand far more broadly if we're serious. And if we're not serious, let's just say, no, we're not going to be serious. We don't really want to have people healthy because there's no money in our current paradigm for health. And so the third challenge, the last challenge would be, how do we then begin to incent our health and human services dollars to create health and better human services?
Well, first of all, Virginia Knight gets the award. She say you were coming. She wrote in her comments that Dr. Mason was laying too low and too quiet. It was coming, and that it did. But you know what? Pete gave a very, Pete took a little message, and I want to share that message that Pete shared. I know the congressman wasn't asking me my opinion, but I just want to add to what you guys were saying. Dr. P says, the WHO's definition of health in 1948 says health is the state of complete mental, physical, and social state of being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So that was in 1948. I think we have maybe missed that mark from 1948. So are we getting back on track so we can do exactly what it was? Because basically, what that definition is talks about every aspect of what you guys have shared. So thank you, Dr. Pete, for that note that you shared. Go right ahead, Congressman.
I agree with all of those, and I'd probably throw in fulfilling social role expectations to add to it. We suggest that if you don't vote in these elections, you ain't healthy. I mean, if you're not helping make these public decisions, then you're not fulfilling your social role obligations and expectations. And I must confess that I've had about 10 or 12 groups that have already suggested to me the question they want me to ask. I'm saying everybody from their perspective, and several different members of my staff, depending on the area in which they work. I mean, people who work in child welfare primarily, they've got some questions they want asked about children and what do we do and how do we do it to save the children. Others have environmental questions they want to ask, and it really makes for a very interesting scenario. And I'm going to be listening very carefully also to what my colleagues will be asking, because there are 25 of us. and I'm going to be listening to see what they ask. And I think in terms of process, that all of this really becomes part of trying to democratize society. And that's where this business of what democracy is, because it really means that neither one of us will get our individual way, but collectively we might be able to arrive at something that moves us beyond where we are in a real direction towards where we want to get to. And so I think the approach certainly helps. I want to thank each one of you for your help. And I still haven't decided what my question is going to be. And I got to admit, I'm going to have to say, can I submit some of these for the record? Because I know I'm not going to get any kind of answer. So I'll submit, can I submit these 10 for the record and maybe get an answer in writing? But thank you. Big help.
Congressman, one other thing I'd like to just add is that there's a book that I use a lot in my talks. It is a book put out by the Central Intelligence Agency, and it's called the CIA World Fact Book. And you can go online and you can go to it and you won't get phone calls or strange messages, because it keeps data on every country in the world. in every kind of way. And it looks at life expectancy. It looks at all kinds of things. And one of the things that we have to understand is that there are other countries in the world who do a far better job of taking care of their young and their old than we do. And there may be some opportunities for some lessons for us to be learned if we look at those countries where they do a better job. Maybe we can't import everything they do, but we certainly can begin to think about how we begin to import some of the things they do. And of course, in many of those countries, they don't have the backdrop of the successful local implementation of the global white supremacy strategy as well as we have operating in this country. But there are ways that we can begin to think about how we even begin to deal with that.
And then realistically, the framework with which we are saying these things, right? In 1776, we wrote something saying we have these, what do you call it? Inalienable rights. Life, the middle one was liberty in the pursuit of happiness. They had slaves while they wrote that. So they should have written life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for some people. And so when Dr. Pete, thank you, Dr. Pete, for thinking about that, putting up that WHO definition from 1948, health is a state of complete mental, physical, and social state of being, not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. I challenge you to wrap your head around, they possibly should have written for some people. And then when we look at reopening and a lot of things we're doing, we could just be doing this for some people. And so this doesn't go into necessarily the question we want to ask, but I'm hoping and thanking you, Congressman Davis, that I know with your leadership, the outcome will be for all people in this instance. So when we move forward, I'm hoping and expecting and excited that this is an opportunity for us to move forward for all people. If we're ready, if we're ready, like Dr. Mason said, like, are we going to do this? Or are we going to do it? If we're not going to do it, just say, basically, just say that. If you're not going to do it, just say that, But hopefully, and I know we have people in leadership that are ready to do it now. And I look forward to what other people got in 1776. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all people.
You're muted, Congressman. Congressman, you're muted. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Maybe we can add that to the sentence.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know I've been getting your text messages and I've seen your inboxes that this hour just goes too quickly. And I know when there is great information being shared, it does go very fast. I want to make a quick announcement really quickly. And then, of course, we're going to go around the table and we're going to do our until next Monday, your thoughts. But I want to remind you to join us on Saturday. This Saturday, June 12th, at health screenings will start at 9 a.m. We're going to have a program that's going to start at 10:30 a.m. But it's a male health initiative. Near North does a male health initiative every year, but this year we'll be partnering with them and we'll be doing their kickoff celebration. We have some outstanding healthcare ambassadors who are going to share some of their stories with you on that day. From State Representative Marcus Evans, who is a young cancer survivor, to Joe Harrington, our very own Dr. Pete, our very own Dr. Terry Mason, to NBA stars, retired and current, Mr. Bobby Simmons, and Theo Hill, who are all now still with the NBA, to the Honorable Marcus Salone, to Kamal Murray, a professional tennis player who is a stroke survivor, who's going to share some stories with you on that day, to the Alpha Phi Alpha Surgeon General, who will be there with us on that day, Jack Lynch from Gift of Hope, and so many more. So we want to invite you out and join with our healthcare ambassadors. We have great gifts that will be given away on that day, and also at 1 p.m. At 1 p.m., I said 1 p.m. At 1 p.m., we're going to have an outstanding conversation. And that conversation is men deserve great health. They deserve to live, to stand up. It will be a healthcare conversation on law in your community, the trauma of the real African American man in our society. We'll have the Chicago police there sharing information and having this roundtable discussion with Attorney David Kelly, Attorney Marcus Gray, with Wayne Williams of the Chosen Few, Ed Beckham from Sankofa State Child Initiative. Once again, Justice Marcus Salone, to Obadiah, a radio personality, Kamal Murray, Munir Muhammad, and also Mandy Muhammad will be there with us, and so many more. So we want you to join us on that day. We have great gifts and great giveaways. Of course, we will be vaccinating on that day just as well and doing healthcare screening. And we have a caveat for you on that day. We're going to have a cook-off, a grilling competition between the Chicago Police Department and the Chicago Fire Department. We have a traveling trophy that's going to be moving around. And we have a grilling competition between Alpha Phi Alpha and Omega Psi Phi. So we're going to have some grills going on that day and some competitions going. And Aquavit will be there with us as well, the South Side Aquavit and West Side Aquavit, and they will be in this competition just as well. I want to say thank you to Walmart, Target, Gift of Hope, the Slingshots, Aetna, Aquavit, Pier 31, the Chicago Police Department, the Chicago Fire Department, A Phi A, Alpha Phi Alpha, and also Omega Psi Phi, who are our great community partners, who's helping this to be a success. So join us on Saturday, June 12th. Come early, grab a seat, win some gifts. We have some wonderful gift cards and things that we'll be giving away. That flyer information is up, and Ms. Frazier, I'll share that with you once again. We did not forget any of your questions. We hold these questions, and we'll reintroduce them on next week because we know that they are so important, but the hour just goes really fast. We also want to remind you, just as Dr. Maya said, to remember to wash those hands. It is so important to wash those hands. Wash them very good. 20 seconds, sing the birthday song. Don't forget to get under the nails and to hit those thumbs, like she also tells us. So yeah, I know my hands look a little leathery, and that's from washing them. Got to get that hand moisturizer on them, but they're going to be okay. Also, I want to remind you to continue when you feel like you need to. If you haven't reached that 70%, make sure you wear your mask. Wear that mask or wear your mask. But then when wearing that mask, wear it properly. Make sure that it's over your nose and mouth, not on top of your forehead or on your chin, but make sure it's over your nose and mouth. If we're not in an area where we have not reached that 70%, or when you're just really unsure, we want to remind you to do that. As we go around the table, once again, Dr. James Miller, your until next Monday.
Yes, we've talked on this particular session, as well as we've been talking all along, that we have reached a time when we really got to get serious about making some changes if we want to have a healthy community, a healthy nation. We're going to have to make some real changes, and those changes would be things that will allow people to have good health and to avoid some of these diseases. And so we got to go from management to prevention. And I think, and I want the community and everybody to understand that this is not just a physician problem or position. The physicians are not necessarily going to be the only one to change this process. The consumers, the people that utilize healthcare, will need to be very active and very knowledgeable in practicing good health, preventative health, as opposed to continuing to accept management of diseases. And I think that we better get serious about that. You know, as we listen to everybody throughout all these various conversations, we always say, well, we would like to do that, but we can't afford it. And managing diseases are going to get more and more expensive. So we better learn how to prevent some of these diseases.
All right. Prevent the diseases. Dr. Maya Green, you're until next Monday.
I have mute problem. Sorry. Until next Monday, I will go back to what we said before and dovetailing off what Dr. Miller said. We have to protect our tribe. So you have to protect the people around you, the community. Now this summer is going to be a time like before for us to make moves that are going to be protective. Keep your mask if you need it. Wash your hands. kind of what we've seen with HIV, diabetes, all those things. The first narrative that goes out does not include protecting people of color. You know, so just keep doing the same things that you've been doing to be safe all this time. And it's not over just yet, but one day it will be over. I look forward to seeing you all and your lovely faces at that time in person. All right.
All right, Dr. Terry Mason, you're until next Monday.
Take heed to the things that we've heard, not just tonight, but all the nights that you have tuned in, and select those things that you can do and implement to positively change your own life and perhaps some of the lives of the people around you. And until then, continue to stay safe and stay ever diligent on making sure that you can make yourself the best and healthiest person you can be.
Thank you so much. Dr. Tony Hampton, you're until next Monday.
I think that if we can, this is what I tell my patients in terms of what they can do right now to be healthier, metabolically healthy. Number one, we're gonna stop consuming seed oils. So when you see a vegetable oils, 9 times out of 10, they're a seed oil, and they had to take that seed and process it to make a vegetable. Imagine taking the seed, and unlike an olive, you have to convert that to oil. That's toxic to your body. And the good news is vegetable oils are not addictive. We just got to know that they're harmful. Yes, I'm talking about corn oil. I'm talking about anything that says vegetable oil. The oils that you want, I tell my patients, boca, which is mouth in Spanish, butter, believe it or not, olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil are oils that are better because they're not processed. Number two, the second thing that's killing us is sugar. I don't care what kind of sugar it is, agave nectar, whatever. If it's sweet, it's probably harmful. So we need to cut out the sugar. So if we get rid of these processed vegetable oils and convert to the healthier oils, and I understand there's a budgeting issue with the vegetable oils. I know avocado oil is not cheap, but you can find it at, Sam's and Costco at better prices. And then the third thing I would say is start eating at home. The pandemic has taught us how to eat at home. So no matter what your dietary approach, start cooking real food at home. And if you just do that one thing and then do a little experiment, if you eat something and 2 hours later I don't care if it's a grain or whatever, if it raises your blood sugar, that's not for you. So vegetable oils, sugar, and start eating at home. If you do those 3 things, your life will change and your family lives will change. And that'll be my final message.
Eat at home. Dr. P, you're until next Monday.
Yeah, just I would just say to have people to pay attention to their emotions and not allow their emotions to dictate their behavior. And I think sometimes we're unaware of our emotions and we participate in unhealthy behaviors as a reaction to how we feel, instead of just acknowledging how we feel and dealing with that. That's what I would say.
Congressman Davis, take us home.
If you know any low-income people, individuals who earn less than $75,000 a year and have children under the age of 17, ask them to grab yesterday's Sun Times and read about the tremendous child tax credits that they are eligible for that could probably net them $6,000 or $7,000 if they've got 2 children and they're under 17. That there is mecca money there for them. And if they don't know about it, they can read about it in yesterday's Sun Times. If they are also low income and they don't earn at least $98,000 a year, they're single, or twice that if they are married or filed income tax jointly, and they don't have the technology, this equipment that we're using right now, or don't know how to use it, or don't have the money to get it, they can basically make use of the $3.2 billion that's being released right now for individuals to buy computers. They got $100 to connect to the internet. So if you know any in low income people who don't earn a lot of money, but who could make use of money, even if they don't have to file income tax, they can make use of the earned income tax credits. More benefit for low income people that the government has provided since the Great Society days, since the war on poverty. It's really there for them. They can use it, and the checks will start coming if they already got checking accounts and stuff like that, and they've been filing income tax. The checks will start coming in the mail next month in July. Have a wonderful evening, and hope is on the way. And a little help is already here. Thank you all.
And the information that the congressman just shared is on both of our Facebook pages. So if you look right under this post of this live video, you'll see it there. And if you also go to his page, you'll see it as well. Thank you guys so much. Until next Monday, see you then.
All right. Bye-bye.